We'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We are broadcasting from the Frisco Chamber of Commerce. My name is Tony Felker, President and CEO. I'm joined here by our Governmental Affairs Manager, Mr. Christopher Lee. Welcome, Chris.
Morning, Tony.
I don't know about anybody else out there, and don't take this personally, but I actually see a couple of bags under those eyes, and
It's been a long few days. And it's not over yet. We've got a little bit more that we're tracking, obviously nationally, but locally, just crunching some numbers to see what happened and looking forward to what's to come here locally.
So for anybody just joining, welcome and thank you for joining our post-election discussion here on what sort of happened over the last 2 days and what I guess is happening, because a lot is finalized, at least to the extent that it can be, but a lot is not yet finalized, correct? Just on a very broad statement.
Yep. So right now what's happened is a lot of the mail-in ballots are still being counted across the state. That is happening here in Texas and across the nation. Mail-in ballots here in Texas, if they were postmarked by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, they can still be counted. So a lot of elections offices are still looking for those in the mail. We don't expect a large majority of those. A lot of those have already been received. So there shouldn't be a large change in numbers at all, one, maybe two, in a lot of the races that we're looking at. And then nationally, obviously, they're still counting everywhere. So we'll count until we've counted them all.
Whoever thought counting would be that key word. So let's back up a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of the different races that you've been looking at. We're going to start off on a local level and then build up. But I wanted to kind of reset before we look as to what happened. Let's talk a little bit, let's start with city council races. Yep. And what was at stake in terms of Frisco City Council races, if you want.
So Frisco City Council, we had two races this cycle for City Council. Originally, they were scheduled for a May election. Due to COVID and everything, they've been pushed back to this November election. So we just
Let me interrupt right there. Has that ever happened before here in Frisco?
To my knowledge, that has never happened in Frisco for a May election, for a City Council election to be pushed to a November election. This is the first time in Frisco's history that has happened. And that's brought some interesting things to the forefront of the conversation around uniform election dates and that kind of discussion. So we had two places on the ballot, place 5 and place 6. I do also want to mention we did have the mayor on the ballot. He was unopposed.
I don't think I had ever seen that he actually did win his election. He did win.
He did, yes.
He got that one vote he needed. Good.
I did confirm that. Mayor Cheney, congratulations. Glad to have you for another 3 years.
Just to make it legit.
So we did have 3 races on the ballot, 2 contested. So let me rephrase what I said earlier. 2 contested, place 5 and place 6. Place 5 was an open race. Councilman Tim Nelson is rolling off. He's actually stayed on council for an additional 6 months. So thank you, Councilman Nelson, for hanging out with us a little bit longer and serving the city here. We do really appreciate that. And then place 6 was Brian Livingston, an incumbent running for his second term on council. And he had 3 people in that race. 7 people in place 5, so we had a lot of candidates that we were following along the way.
I think that's a great point, that when you get, especially open seats, but we're getting more people even for incumbent seats, but for open seats, this has now been 3 or 4 years where a number of people have been wanting to step up, and I think that's a great thing. I don't like it when there's an open seat, one person or maybe 2. I like it. It makes it a little bit more difficult on you, maybe, but it's great when we have that many people that want to serve their community.
No, and to that point, I want to say thank you to everyone who's put their name in the ballot, on the ballot this cycle. I mean, it's a huge thing to do. It's a huge commitment to put your name on the ballot and campaign. And I saw every one of these candidates out campaigning. They joined us for our candidate forums. So I just want to start off by saying thank you to all of you for putting your name out there. I mean, it's a huge step in our democracy. And
they have all now experienced something they had not experienced before, and whether that was positive or negative, they are better off for it, and they have grown. I can tell you that firsthand. So now I wanted to emphasize a couple of things. So I want to make certain everybody listening, watching, recording afterwards, that any statements that we have are not our own personal opinions. They're not the opinions of the chamber. We do not come out and support candidates. But based upon what I, and especially what you have heard on the street, there may have been some discussion and thought out there who maybe had been a favorite in one of those races or maybe not. Can we talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into what actually happened?
Yeah, so a lot of the conversation, and this is, so as another side note in all of this, a little bit of my background is I've done some consulting on city council races, and I've also worked on campaigns both on the statewide and on state house races. And so I've seen a little bit of this campaign side in my past. And so there's a lot of conversation that happens in cities or districts that people say, oh, this is the favored candidate. This is what we think is going to happen based on their experience or their history in the city, things along those lines. And so that being said, somebody who didn't make it to the runoff was considered a favorite. Rob Cox was somebody who had a great deal of experience, currently serves on our P&Z committee, and was considered by a lot of Frisco insiders, if you will, to be one of the considered favorites for the runoff. I think it was expected it was going to go to
Matter
runoff.
of fact, we made the joke a little bit that a lot of people thought he had served more years in the community than some of the candidates' ages. I mean, just to give you an idea of where he was placed, and yet you say he did not make the runoff. So
he did not.
Who
no.
did?
So for place 5 in our city council race with 7 candidates in it, we've whittled it down to 2. We do have Dan Strickland and Laura Rummel. So Dan Strickland ended up with 27% of the vote, and Laura Rummel had 24% of the vote. And in Frisco City Council, in order to win a race outright, you need to have 50% of the vote plus 1. And so they came short of that, but that does mean we get to go to a runoff, and we get to hear from them for a little bit longer. So that'll be good.
Very good. And in the other seat then, where we had 3 candidates.
Yes. So in place 6, Brian Livingston is currently the incumbent, and it looks like he's going to continue to serve in that role as city councilman for place 6. He won that race with 58%. So that is not going to go to a runoff. That was one that was also, it was getting a lot of regional attention for that race. He was competing against Sadaf Hawk and Sai Krishna. That race had some national attention on it as well towards the end. And so that was one that was considered to be very close and potential for a runoff as well. Especially with 3 candidates in the race, you never know with the majority needed to win.
But with an incumbent, 58%, only 3 opponents, it's not unheard of. What I want to go back and dig a little bit deeper in, you had what many consider to be maybe a favorite, at least to be in a runoff with Rob Cox. He did not make it in. Is that typical? Why did that happen on this election? Were there other factors that led to that?
So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of what kind of plays into that this cycle was the fact that it was moved from a May election to a November election. Traditionally, in the last 5 years in Frisco, there hasn't been a turnout greater than about 14,000 votes. In this election, we had about 70,000 votes in this May or in the November.
5 times the normal level.
5 times the normal amount of people turned out for this election. And so because of that, nobody really knew how it was going to shake out. We had a different universe. When in campaign talk, we talk about voter universe. It's the people that you talk to, the people that are going to turn out for that election. And this voter universe was just unexpected. We didn't know what was going to turn out for this vote. It was larger than we'd ever expected. We're looking at 76% turnout for
Which is great.
It's amazing. We want that in every election. But
Alcohol does help turnout, by the way. I don't mean consuming alcohol, but alcohol on issues always increases the
it does.
turnout,
It does.
but
You
not
see
to that degree.
Bond elections, mayoral elections, contested mayoral elections, and alcohol are all elections that you typically see a higher turnout in, and also the national elections. So.
Now, and you mentioned the higher turnout. We had 2 other factors that I think play a key part in that. One, this was the first year with one-ticket party. You couldn't just check one box and vote all Republican. You had to go through every single name on the ballot. And also, local races are nonpartisan. This November are partisan races. How did that affect the turnout and possible why one candidate may have been done better or not done as well?
So that's a really good point. I do want to emphasize that. Our local elections are nonpartisan races. They are not tied to a party affiliation. They are not Republican. They are not Democrat. They are nonpartisan. Their party is the city of Frisco. That is it. And that is something that was very different this cycle because it was in May. And I stood out at the polls for a few hours on Election Day and a little bit during early voting just to kind of see what was going on out there. And voters were asking, are you Republican or Democrat? That's what people wanted to know. And so that really did change the dynamic in this race a lot. So that was a
huge turnout.
Yeah, huge
a lot
turnout.
of different factors at play. The number of people, the partisan nature of it, but a local election, no straight party ticket voting, contributed to a lot of different factors that you're still trying to sift through and figure out.
Exactly, and one of the statistics that I do want to mention, which is fairly interesting, and I think it talks to the straight ticket voting. So for those who are unfamiliar with this, 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago, you were able to go in on a November ballot and click all Republicans, and it voted for all the Republicans all the way down the ballot. This cycle, that changed. That change was first initiated 4 years ago during the legislature here in Texas. So it's a complicated history, and we'll leave it at that. But what is interesting is when you look at your ballot, you have an R or a D next to a lot of the people's names. It says Republican or Democrat. You go all the way down the ballot, and you get to city council, and it doesn't say anything. It's nonpartisan, right? Well, one of the interesting statistics that I've seen so far, and I don't have an exact number on this yet, but the undervote, and what this means is that people who have gone in, voted at least on one thing on that ballot, whether it's president, senate, congressional member, or anything else, but did not, or left a blank. So they left blank city council, about 10,000 people in Frisco. That statistic is probably going to change a little bit as I get a few more numbers in, but about 10,000 people did not vote in the city council race that turned out to vote in Frisco for president or another race. So it's an interesting statistic.
And I know that you and many other, what's the term? Governmental affairs wonks?
Yeah, nerds.
Nerds, okay. I was trying to be polite. You guys are going to be slicing these numbers for months to come, looking at it all different ways, from the national to the state to the local level. So
yeah,
have fun doing all that for us.
Just for my fellow nerds in the world, this is part of our turnout spreadsheets that I'm putting together. So it's very interesting to go in and look at the data and how it all came out. So fellow nerds unite. It'll be a good time.
You love this time of year, but you're also not getting much sleep either.
No, this is my Super Bowl.
So thank you for doing this. So Brian Livingston is in.
Yep.
No runoff required. He will have 3 more years. In the other race, Laura Rummel and Dan Strickland. What happens there now?
So I want to also put an asterisk on some of the things that we've just talked about. I haven't really gotten into the specific number of votes, and part of that is because these are unofficial, uncanvassed votes. So the official canvassing of the votes, that's when they'll look at all the numbers and say, okay, this is it. These are the final numbers. That'll happen on November 13th. So we have a little bit of time before then, but after November 13th, the election for our runoff will begin. So on November 23rd, we will start early voting for our runoff candidates, and it'll only be place 5. It'll be Laura Rummel and Dan Strickland on our ballot, and I believe that'll be the only thing on that ballot in Frisco.
Okay, for those who may not know, and I don't want everybody getting excited, when you say canvass the results, we're not talking recounts, we're not talking looking at ballots, we're not challenging, it's just an official process to certify the election results. And there's no recounting going on here in Frisco.
Correct. They say, yep, these are the numbers, they're done, here's the stamp of approval, and we'll call it official.
Our good candidates know how to accept the results and move on from there. So very good. So once again, the voting will start in the runoff on when?
November 23rd, so that's the week of Thanksgiving, so November 23rd through 25th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then I believe these are for both counties. We'll have to, we'll release the official early voting dates and times on the Frisco Chamber website, friscochamber/vote, when that comes up. And so we'll put all that, but early voting runs from approximately November 23rd through December 3rd. There's some weekends in there and some holidays that there won't be, and the official election day will be on December 8th.
Now, if somebody doesn't know anything about Laura Rummel or Dan Strickland, we want everybody to come on out. We want 76% turnout again in the runoff. That'll happen, right, in the runoff?
Absolutely. Probably not. We're probably looking at closer to about a 3 to 5% turnout in a runoff in between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
So that's a very different dynamic.
Very
different. You come out being in the November partisan party election as opposed to May. You have our 2 runoff, and now we may have a very low turnout in the runoff. So these candidates have got to adapt a lot.
Absolutely. Well, and like I said, with some of my campaign background and talking about voter universes, that shifts drastically. And it's going to be, this election nationally was a turnout election. Who was going to get the most votes in this election was based off of who was going to turn out their base or their supporters. This runoff election is going to be the exact same thing. It's going to be who's going to turn out the most supporters for themselves.
And the person who gets the most votes in the runoff I predict will win the runoff.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you
Okay,
on that.
we're good there. So we mentioned, if they don't know either of the candidates, we have the last candidate forum that we did, which involved all 7
Correct.
in the race. Is that the best place for them to get to know and just kind of filter through the other candidates, or how would they get to know these candidates?
So that is a great starting point, but we've got a great opportunity for both of our candidates on November 16th. November 16th in the evening, we'll announce the official time here soon. We're doing a runoff candidate forum, and I talked to both candidates last night. It looks like that date's going to be available for both of them. So we're going to be hosting another candidate forum here at the Chamber. We'll do a live stream very similar to our previous candidate forum. If you haven't seen our previous candidate forum, it's great content. I definitely suggest you go check it out. It's on our YouTube page, it's on our Facebook, it's on our website. You can't miss it. So that'll be the next opportunity that we have here at the Chamber, where you can hear from those candidates, and I'm sure they're going to be participating in other local forums around the city.
This one will be the best one. We
Absolutely.
want everybody to turn in. So we've covered the local to a certain degree. A lot of the issues that we've talked about in the council races also, or may have also applied. We had a school board race as well.
That we did. We did have a school board race. One of the things that I just want to start off by saying that's very different between our city council races and our school board races is the city council is a majority. So we talked about that 50% plus 1 vote. In our FISD school board elections, those are just a plurality. What that means is if you get the most votes, you win. There is no runoff. That's just kind of how it shakes out. And in that election, it was an open race, and there was 4 candidates in that race, and Dinette A. Davis is our winner in that race with 36% of the vote. So she will be on school board for, I believe it's a three-year term.
I believe.
Yeah, 3-year term.
You should know that.
I should know that. It's been got a lot of numbers in my head these days, but 3-year term. She'll be starting, I believe, here in the next month or so.
Very good. Very good. All right. Anything else on the local level?
I've seen conversation on social media about the school board race. I do want to just talk about very briefly, and that is Shawn Heatley on our FISD school board candidate list.
Because we had to have something different in this race as well.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of something everywhere. So just want to dive into that very briefly. Shawn Heatley was on the ballot, but he had withdrawn as a candidate from the race. So a lot of questions around that are, why was he still on the ballot? Why was there no notification at the polls about the candidate withdrawing from the race, but his name was still on the ballot? Most of it was timing. And I want to reiterate, we appreciate everyone who steps out there and puts their name on a ballot. It is a huge step that you take to serve your community, and we want to say thank you to all of you. And we definitely understand that sometimes things don't work out the way everybody plans. And so something came up with Shawn, and so he had to withdraw from the race. But at that time, when that happened, it was after mail-in ballots had already been printed and sent out to overseas. So some of our military members had already received their ballots, and his name was already on it. And so there was a couple options. If he were to win, there's details that we don't need to get into because the race is decided. But basically, it was based on current election law. There was no notice required at the polls for that race specifically. And so his name was still on the ballot, but it was just kind of due to timing. That's really what it came down to.
And a lot of complications. So you not only had that factor, but here again, ISD races are nonpartisan. Some people may have been confused on that, given the fact it was in November. So lots of stuff to go through. But that one is settled. Plurality. Dinette Davis is in.
Yep.
She'll be sworn in and going on from there.
Yep.
Very good.
So that's I believe, all of our Frisco-specific races, our city council and our school board races.
So as we take it up from there, now we do get into the county, state races. Those are partisan elections. So by this point in time, we've been through the primaries. We had one in each party voting on, and we had a number of Frisco area elected officials, including county commissioners that were on the ballot, House representatives, state senators that were included. So can you kind of give us a quick rundown for those Frisco residents who was impacted as far as their representation?
Absolutely. So we'll start with our same trend of going local and then going larger from there. And so we'll start with our county commissioners. And we'll start in Denton County. So Ryan Williams unseated the incumbent during the primary, Hugh Coleman, and it looks like he is definitely going to be our county commissioner. He won his race with 60% of the vote over in Denton County. So Ryan Williams will be serving the city of Frisco and Precinct 1 in Denton County as a commissioner moving forward. So
I love trivia questions. Does every county have the same number of county commissioners?
no.
Really? You caught me by surprise now.
I believe there are 2 major counties in the state that have 5.
Okay.
But other
in
than
general.
that, in general,
I should have known that to challenge the expert here. So in general, 4 county
In general,
commissioners, 1
absolutely.
county judge.
Yep.
And by the way, the county judge, a lot of people think it's a judicial position. It's more, think of it as the mayor of the county, correct?
he's the CEO of the
There you
county.
go.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's what a county judge is. County commissioners are essentially city councilmen, but for a larger area of the county. They handle a lot of county healthcare issues, county road issues, and a few other things. County
Health.
elections. County elections is all of our elections are run through our county.
Health services, all that.
Yep.
So Ryan Williams in Denton County representing Frisco. In Collin County, what happened as far as our Frisco representative there?
So Collin County, our incumbent was Susan Fletcher. I don't believe she had an opponent in the primary, and she was also successful in her race. She has 59% of the vote to her opponent's 41%. Courtney Brooks was her opponent, 41%. So Susan Fletcher will continue to serve us here in the city of Frisco on the Collin County side, and so we look forward to working with both of our county commissioners on both sides of the county line moving forward as we continue to grow and develop Frisco.
On a side note, but I know part of what you want to do is to educate all of our community, especially our business community, on things that are governmental affairs related. That's where you're going to dig in. What was the term you used for that?
Nerds?
Nerds.
Yeah.
The fact that we straddle 2 counties, that is not typical for most cities. It's not unheard of, but it's not typical, and
Correct.
it does present certain circumstances where we have 2 county commissioners. As we'll talk about next on the state level, we have 2 state representatives, 2 state senators. So that's something else that you get to keep track of there.
Yep, absolutely. So that's one of the things that is very interesting about Frisco. We are one of the largest cities in the state that I believe splits a county line. I'll confirm that statistic at a later date. But it is very interesting because approximately 40% of our population lives in Denton County, and approximately 60% lives in Collin County. And so that alone presents its own issues, especially as we look down the road into redistricting, how that's handled. Conversation for another day.
But we've also seen it over the last 8 months, the mayor having to respond to 2 different county judges in terms of COVID decisions and things like that. So just to make your job and everybody else's job here a little bit more challenging, just wanted to throw that out there as we continue to educate our folks.
Absolutely. So from there, we'll go ahead and move on to our state reps. Over on the Denton County side, it's state rep. House District 106, Jared Patterson was the incumbent. He was successful in his primary run. And now he will continue to be our state rep. He won with 59% of the vote. These are all approximations, by the way. There's some decimal points after the fact. I wanted to simplify it for the most part.
Thank
so 59% of the vote for Jared Patterson, 41% for Jennifer Skinadico. So Jared Patterson will continue to serve us in the state house down in Austin. So congratulations, Jared. I'm very happy to work with you down the road. So it'll be really good. And over on our Collin County side, State Representative Justin Holland was opposed by Andy Rose. Justin Holland won with 59% of the vote as well. Again, these are approximations.
Pick up on the trend here, 59-41. If I don't know, I'm just going to go 59-41. It's approximate, not finalized yet, but 59-41.
It's pretty close, pretty good trend. But Justin Holland will continue to serve us in House District 33 for the next 2 years. And just as a point of note, our county commissioners serve, I believe it's 4-year terms. So every 4 years, they'll run for re-election. Our state representatives run every 2 years, and so
they're constantly running.
Constantly running. So a state legislative or state house cycle typically will go in January. We'll start the legislative session. They'll work for 6 months and then campaign for 18 months, and then work for 6 months and then campaign for 18 months. And that's kind of the life of a House member. And by the way, these are volunteer positions. Our state House members do not get paid to do this. It's a citizen legislature, and so they serve us, volunteer to serve us, and we really appreciate that. So Justin and Jared, Representative Patterson and Representative Holland, congratulations, and we look forward to working with you in Austin.
I like the fact that it was Jared and Justin. That's the kind of working relationship. We understand the formal titles and we respect that, but it's also good we have that kind of a working relationship with hopefully all of our elected officials where it can be that kind of a deal. And that helps our business community because they're going to take your call when you reach out to them, and it's a one-on-one discussion. So
Absolutely.
Very good. Moving up to the next level.
Yep. So we're going to move over to state senate. State senators run. I'm going to get the numbers wrong. It's either 2 or 4 year cycles, depending on a couple things. Don't quote me on that one. Again, I've got a lot of numbers.
It gets complicated.
I got a lot of numbers in my head, so I apologize in advance. But this cycle, most importantly, we had State Senator Jane Nelson. She serves Frisco on the Denton side of our county line, and she was up for re-election this year. And she was successful with 62% of the vote versus Shadi Zatoun, I believe that's how you say his name. And so Senator Nelson will continue to serve Frisco as our state senator, and we congratulate her on that victory. Her district is part of Denton County and Tarrant County. So if you go to our Denton County elections website and look at our results and those numbers don't match up, it's because it also includes Tarrant County. So just as an FYI for those who want to dive a little bit deeper.
Their area of responsibility gets a little bit bigger than the representatives. So.
Yep. As we go up through all of these, the population kind of grows with each of these different districts.
And on our Collin County side, our state senator race.
So on the Collin County side, we did not have a state senator election. We do have a state senator. State Senator Angela Paxton has served us for the last 2 years and will continue to serve us for 2 more years. Once we redistrict, then that election will happen again. So we have State Senator Angela Paxton for 2 more years. So looking forward to working with them down in the legislature as well.
And that obviously covers our Frisco elected officials directly, aside from obviously some larger ones on a national level. But we did want to highlight a couple of other races because actually the eyes of the country in many ways were on Collin County. I'm not sure if that's for good reasons or bad reasons, but it was interesting reasons given these times that we're in. Do you want to highlight a couple of the other races that were being talked about and had some serious implications and why they had implications there?
Yeah, so a couple ways we can cut this pig up, but we'll talk about the national attention.
I'm drinking water.
The national attention was really focused on Frisco because of Collin County and because of a national effort to flip the state house. So the state house had some national attention. Multiple organizations from across the country were putting dollars into the races here in Frisco or in Collin County to try to flip the house. As I've said a couple times, redistricting is coming up. That's a big issue that's nationally looked at, and so dollars were coming in from all over the country about that. And so last cycle, there was also a lot of indicators that some House races could flip this cycle, and what that means for in layman's terms is go from Republican to Democrat. Collin County is a big Republican stronghold. We've got, I believe, every state rep in Collin County is a Republican state rep, and that held true this cycle. That was something that was very, very much up in the air, and that's why national eyes were on us. New York Times was interviewing people on Election Day here in Collin County because the country was really focused on, is Texas going to flip? If Texas is going to flip, it'll flip Collin County, and that'll be an indicator for the rest of the state. That was what was talked about prior to the results coming in. I think we've seen very different conversations since then, but that was a big part of it. And so Jeff Leach, Matt Shaheen were 2 of the names that were really focused on as House seats that they wanted to flip. Representative Leach won by 3,000 votes. I believe there was about 100,000 votes in that race. I could be wrong with that number. Large number of votes. It was a very slim margin for him to only win by about 3,000 votes. And so it still proved Collin County is a red county. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is Collin County is a solidly Republican county. And you can say it for the last 3 election cycles, we're going to flip Texas, but as long as Collin County stays red, you're not going to flip Texas.
So it's important to note Collin County is important to the state, not only as we always are talking about from an economic perspective, but from a political perspective. And a lot of Texas is driven by Collin County. We want everybody to keep that in mind, and we want to keep that going forward. But it's also not a secret that we've had a lot of in-migration from other states, and I know a lot of people were looking to see how is that going to affect the local turnout. Will that start to turn the state a little more purple, a little more blue, a little more pink? And the headlines this morning in one publication I saw, Texas actually looks a little more pink, which is a little bit different than what a lot of people were expecting.
Absolutely. Well, and to talk a little bit about the people moving into Frisco, that were coming in, the immigration from other states, if you will, the Californians coming into Texas. That's been
We can
something.
just say it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Californians coming in coming into Texas,
Which we like.
We do. We welcome them every day. I'm sure a few more move in, and we do new resident packets here at the chamber, and I'm sure a lot of those go to new Texas residents joining us from California. So a lot of that, you look at our companies. You look at Toyota down in Plano. You look at a lot of the other companies that are down there in Plano at their headquarters. A lot of that employee base is coming in from California. And Matt Shaheen, who represents that area, had an even closer margin in his race. It was about 1,000 votes that separated him and his opponent. He still won, but it was still a very close margin. And it talks to the governor has campaigned multiple times and says, don't California my Texas. That's kind of been his thing, and I think it holds true. People are moving to Texas from California, and they're not necessarily bringing their politics with them, as Governor Abbott has warned them. So it'll be interesting.
So the House in Austin stays Republican controlled. The Senate is also. State leadership is still staying basically Republican. What are some things that people should be looking at now that we know that? Is there anything else happening down in Austin before the session starts in January?
There's always something happening down in Austin. But as far as the state legislature is concerned, there is a speaker race. So Representative Bonin, Speaker Bonin, was the speaker last session. He got himself in some hot water about a year ago. And so from that, he decided he was not going to run for the legislature again. And so what that did is opened up his legislative district down along the Gulf Coast, as well as the speakership. So for those who are unfamiliar, there's 150 members of the legislature. From their body of 150 members, they elect one person to be the Speaker of the House. And so the magic number is 76. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head of how many seats Republicans held on to, but I believe it's somewhere around 78.
I believe that's right.
Again, there's a lot of numbers in my head, but around 78 seats are Republican. So I believe the margin did shrink slightly between Republicans and Democrats in the House down in Austin, but it was maybe 1 or 2 seats and wasn't anything that anybody was super shocked about as far as that's concerned. So speaking of the speaker's race, lots of words. The Representative Dade Phelan, from Beaumont announced yesterday, I believe, that he had 86 commitments to elect him as Speaker. You need 76, like I said, so that's over the margin. However, we have heard through all of the text ledge conversation that the race is not over yet. There are still candidates who have not withdrawn their speakership paperwork. So it could be over.
Commitments are not necessarily full commitments, but a strong indicator perhaps. And if something doesn't go that way, it's going to get very interesting all over again.
So commitments are one thing. The actual vote will happen on the first day of the legislature. So when they meet on the second Tuesday in January, the first thing they'll do is elect the speaker. And that vote comes from usually, in normal times, from commitments prior to going into the legislature. We'll see how this shakes out. We're hearing the race isn't over yet. We heard yesterday the race was over. We don't know what's going to happen.
Very good. Well, speaking of keeping it interesting, and always is, we've got a few minutes left. We want to go ahead and touch base just lightly. I know everybody is following national stuff very closely. There's a lot happening. There's not a lot not happening. But you want to just touch on a couple of the main points that are out there that you want to emphasize as it relates to Frisco and our business community?
Yeah, so on the federal level, just a few things I want to touch on very briefly. We will continue to have our incumbent congressmen as our elected officials. So Van Taylor in Collin County and Michael Burgess in Denton County will continue to serve the city of Frisco in DC for us, and so that'll be great. We've got great working relationships with them, so we're excited to continue that relationship and congratulate them on their victories as well. Federally in Texas on the Senate level, John Cornyn was up for election. John Cornyn won his re-election. He actually outperformed President Trump in Texas by about 1 or 2 points, or percentage points, if I remember correctly. So great to have Senator Cornyn back in there. He's been great for business, and so we're very excited to continue to support our senator there. And then on the national level, we're still counting.
We have a winner. No?
No.
Breaking news right now?
We're
Anything?
not, whoa, I don't want to carry that one. No, we've got a couple states still counting. Georgia, at least at the beginning of this recording. Yes. I don't crucify me if something's happened
You
while
turned
we've
off
been
your
doing
email
this.
notifications, so things may have happened here.
I have no idea what's happened in the last 30 minutes, but as far as I know, Georgia was still counting, North Carolina was still counting, Pennsylvania was still counting, and Nevada was still counting. So we'll know at some point.
Both candidates, as somebody said this morning, somebody has won the election. We just don't know who. And both candidates still have a path to that victory, depending on how everything shakes out. And stay tuned. So we'll just go from there.
Yep.
You mentioned John Cornyn winning, and that was one race in particular, along with many that featured a lot of political advertising. With Texas being at play this year, a lot of times we don't see that much political advertising. We definitely saw it this year. You thank the candidates earlier for getting involved and wanting to serve the community. I want to thank all of the candidates up and down for their political advertising, because in this year, that has kept our economy going with the millions and millions of dollars being put into political advertising. And if you don't like all that political advertising, most of it has stopped now. But look on the positive side of things and how that was good for our economy at all levels. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is all I've got for us today. I don't know if there's any questions that you want to throw at me at the end here, but
we get to do that. We get to tee it up here. Well, you're not taking the national prediction route here. So we know that November 16th, we will have a candidate forum between Dan Strickland and Laura Rummel. Voting, you indicated the dates. We'll get that up on our website and push that out to everybody. We also have another event coming up soon thereafter, because you just love to put everything all together in the month of November.
Like I said, this is my Super Bowl. It's the playoffs and the Super Bowl all at once. But on November 17th, we have our legislative primer. Our legislative primer is an event that we'll do virtually here at the Chamber. We've invited both of our state representatives, both of our state senators to join. I believe we'll have Angela Paxton, Jared Patterson, Justin Holland, and our mayor will all join us, and it'll be moderated by Chris Wallace. We'll kind of just lay out, give everybody the lay of the land. What are we looking at during session? What are going to be our hot topics? What are going to be the key sticking points? What are going to be some issues? Who's going to be the speaker? I mean, we still might not know officially who that's going to be.
2 weeks, what does it change there?
Yeah, so. Who knows what's going to change between now and then. So that's coming up on November 17th.
And just as a reminder, Chris Wallace is head of the North Texas Commission, where we are working very closely. Frisco Chamber is actually one of 9 chambers that has a dedicated governmental affairs program, and we are working closely with North Texas Commission. We've actually divided up key points that we're looking at, key issues, divided up amongst those 9, working with the North Texas Commission. So we mentioned earlier Collin County being the driving force. North Texas is absolutely a driving force, and we want to make certain that our business community across all of North Texas is represented in Austin. They understand what we need from them, how we can help them, and obviously working with the North Texas Commission and having Chris moderate that panel will be great in terms of that unifying effort that we have.
So I do want to end things on one little note. I did overlook something earlier on, and I do want to apologize for that. We went over our contested races in FISD. We did not go over our uncontested races in FISD. We do want to congratulate Debbie Gillespie on her reelection to the FISD school board. She serves us on our school board here in Frisco, but she also serves on, I believe it's TASB, which is a state-level organization for school board officials. And so we want to thank her for her service on both of those. She's been a huge asset here to the Frisco ISD community, and she will continue to do that, and we really thank her for that.
You just wanted to save her for the end and have her be typing up that email, and before she hit send, give her extra notification there in recognition. But no, very good point. And once again, to all of the candidates who run, for all the office holders who are working for our community, you hear about Frisco all the time. It's about partnerships. It's not just between our community entities, but all of our elected officials. This is the way we make things happen here, and part of that secret about what's going on here that makes it all possible. And it's a two-way street. We work well with all of our elected officials. They work with us and our businesses, and we hope to take that to the next level. So one final question. When do you foresee yourself getting a full 8 hours sleep in the future? How many days off will that be before you get a full night's sleep?
May 13th.
Okay, there you go. So we want to thank you for all you're doing. We want to thank our entire team behind the scenes here for putting this possible. If this is good stuff, let us know. Let other people know. It will be recorded. You can view it out there on many different times. Spread the word. And you're going to hear more and more coming to you from governmental affairs perspective, where we can be your voice of business and understanding how business and government work together for the benefit of everybody. So, final words.
Thank you for voting. Continue to vote. We got our runoff election coming up soon. And yeah, I'm at a loss for words.
Stay calm. No matter what the results are at any level, this country is an amazing country. We will all come together. We work together. Stay calm and let's push on. So with that, from the Frisco Chamber, we just want to say again, thank you for voting. Remember to go vote again. Be part of the process. Work with our elected officials. And thank you, Chris, for all you're doing as we slice and dice everything here. And we will see you next time from the Frisco Chamber of Commerce. Sweet. What do you mean we're still broadcasting? And we said what? And it got warm back here, or was it just me?